Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, May 10th. Let's jump into solo adventures and just see if magically this Rise of the Shadow single player experience was going to happen on a Friday. I doubt it would. But, I mean, we are getting now to the point where we're in mid-May for this. So, unless they were going to release this at the very end of May, Tuesday and Thursday of this week would be good days for them to release it. It seems so odd the way they're doing this. If anything, why not go the exact opposite? Have the single player expansion happen a month before the card pack expansion happens. Have people playing the new cards for a month early, getting hyped on them, seeing some really cool things, really building up that hype and want for new cards, and then a month later you go, okay, new card packs are out now. Or why not at least do it at the same time? That way people can play the solo adventure, play the new cards, get hyped on them, and then immediately buy them. It is not really doing any good advertising here. In no way did the card pack expansion hype me or make, I think, anybody interested into paying for the solo adventure experience. Let's see, we've got, warrior overlap on the daily quest. That's gonna suck. And I eventually did get the 2 card packs, which I assume is just from Choose Your Champion things on the Americas account. I don't know why it took a day later, basically. I'm starting late today. The best excuse I can say is I really didn't even stay up too late playing Axiom Verge, which I'm still playing, but I think I am at a point where we're almost close to the end of Axiom Verge, and I would say Axiom Verge does kind of, it's pretty obvious now, it has some problems that would have been prevalent in playing the original Metroid game, being a Metroid clone, while not really adapting any of the general quality of life improvements that a modern take on Metroid should. Games just should be better than they were in the middle of the 80s, and not having an indicator on the map telling you where to go is pretty inexcusable. Not having some markers in some places where things are, even if it was just going to be markers for where you found things after a certain point, so you don't go back to that area and have to look again. And quite frankly, I really have had to go through the entire game a second time now that I have twice as much abilities. I suspect what's going to happen on Axiom Verge is either I'm going to finish it pretty quickly, or they're going to decide that the breaches, which are the one thing I can't get past really right now, are actually going to be transition points to like a Dark World, more a Link to the Past style gameplay. I think A Link to the Past is the one where you travel between Dark World and Light World, or something like that. If that's not the case and the breaches are just actual doors that I'll eventually get an ability to go from the left side of a breach to the right side of the breach, or vice versa, then I don't know at all what would really slow down the gameplay in any way. And the controls on Axiom Verge are problematic. There's a grapple you hit with the B button that is wonky. There's a new double jump. There's a double jump that really isn't a double jump. It's more of your jump is just longer. And then there's a dash that teleports you through things now, that's faster and instantaneous, whereas previously you had to walk next to a wall, double tap in the direction of that wall, and then you could phase through that wall very slowly. That's now been completely replaced. So that would be it would be cool to have this dash if it weren't for the fact that the game really doesn't work well with the left stick at all on a Xbox One control pad. So it really wants you to play with the D-pad, and even play with the D-pad, it's questionable. Let's see. 4 damage to random enemy minion. There we go. Oh no, that seems like that was probably way too early to play the owl on. So, yeah, there's a lot of points where it's like, I know I'm supposed to do this jump, I know I'm supposed to do this, and it's just harder than it should be. I'm playing a really good early game that's probably going to turn into a really bad late game. Let's see. Do 1 damage to all minions. Could I do that? Let's see. If I hit this, and hit this, and hit this. 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 And then we'll do this. And then we'll do this.
Job's done.
And then in the turn. Yeah. Yeah, general wonkiness. A realization eventually came to me with Axiom Verge is that probably, even though Dead Cells is probably a little bit more like Rogue Legacy and a roguelike, and instead of Metroidvania game where, particularly in Metroid, all the collectibles are always in the same place unless you run a randomizer on it, and it's not a case that there will not be something like the Morph Ball in Metroid in some runs of Metroid. At least if you don't randomize the game, so or modify the game so it is like that. Whereas Dead Cells, there very possibly is a gun that isn't available to pick up. Although even in Dead Cells' case, I think that's not how that works, because once you've unlocked a gun, no, I think that is actually how it works. Come to think of it. Let's see. A random spell from their hand. Do you think he has any random spells from his hands? Alright.
Light the fuses!
Don't kill this guy. Yeah. That was a mistake. Or whatever. It drew a bunch of cards. So yeah, the thought is occurring to me, even though I haven't played Dead Cells, I would wonder if you should skip Axiom Verge and just play Dead Cells. And almost certainly if Bloodstained Ritual of the Night comes out and it's really good, that will probably be a way better game than Axiom Verge is. That being said, I guess it depends on how much of a Castlevania, Metroidvania game fan you are, because it might be more of a case that you would want to play all those games. Let's do this, and then do this, and then do this. Kill that.
Job's done.
Besides Axiom Verge, not really doing anything. Running out of space, quite frankly. Oh yes. So today might be a problem, quite frankly, if we go too long. I only have like 30 gigs left of space on my hard drive. So let's not go too long today, if I can avoid that.
Light the fuses!
When deal 5 randomly split amongst all minions except mechs. They're all mechs. Oh, that sucked.
Defend the gates! To me!
I suppose we should start covering the news then at this point. The Sony State of Play happened, and we'll be talking about that almost article for article. It was, generally speaking, 30 minutes long and not very good. Quite frankly, it showed like 5 games, talked nothing about the hardware. It was really just a collection of trailers. I don't think you could call it anything else.
Your magic shall not save you.
Let's see. Do this. So we'll talk about the games there, but there's no real interest. What this leaves me with is now the ball is in Microsoft's court for E3. They could either not announce hardware at all, or just slightly tease the Xbox 2 with a name or something. Or they could try to go out hard on the hardware. I think you probably would be in a good position to specifically, let's play this first, specifically focus on the idea of selling the Xbox without telling any of the specs of the Xbox 2. Because if you play it that way, whatever specs the PlayStation 5 have, you can always work towards one-upping or matching in parity with that and announce that way later, and just it puts Sony in this bad position where it has to stick to its current plan of a very expensive, very high-tier platform, which is kind of against what Microsoft is moving towards right now anyways. So yeah, if you just say the Xbox 2 is coming, it's going to be great, it's going to be awesome, but we're not releasing any hardware specs right now, and you can just continuously work on that. Specs do need to be locked in at a certain point, but that's not something that you really have to tell to the public. And without saying that it has a ray tracing like 2080 in it or the equivalent, it's kind of impossible for anybody to estimate what the price is. So then that eliminates the worry about the price being too high. Also, So if you speak in generics and you talk more about games and you just get the hype up and you say it will definitely be cheaper than a PlayStation 5 and it will definitely be on parity or more powerful than a PlayStation 5 without being specific, that just lobs the ball back into Sony's court. You could try to lock in more, and this would play somewhat well, but not amazingly well for a general consumer to say we have a lot of great partnerships with our developers. We're not censoring our games. We're bringing over a lot more games from a lot more different countries, and we're growing our library. I imagine what they'll kind of try to push is a lot of our games are also playable on PC too. So not only are you able to buy a game for the Xbox One, you'll also get the PlayStation, the PC version of it.
Runs out on me.
Looking at the state of play, and we'll cover it, since they only had like 5 games, Microsoft almost certainly wins unless it shows a horrible showing of less than 5 games, or 5 games that are less interesting than the 5 games shown at the state of play. As long as they can do that bare minimum task, like, I guess maybe the worst case thing Microsoft could do is get Randy Pitchford, the CEO of Gearbox, on stage and have him do a magic trick or something. Show the Sonic the Hedgehog movie trailer or something. As long as they're just not doing something horribly dumb, I think they're in a good position. Deal 2 damage, draw a card. Let's not do that now. So we'll get to that, but let's just go in order of what I have. This game, Yumi Yutsu Remaster, has a launch trailer. It's a bubbly cute girl love game development company and an adventure, and it's coming out on June 13th in Japan. Apparently they're making VR games. I believe there's an anime site like this too, where it's a group of freshly out of college game programmers, all female team. There's a trailer here, but I guess I need to, for the most part, swear off trailers, particularly Japanese teaser trailers, where it is just going to be, in this case, as I'm skipping through it, still images that are floating around. One more casual victory, and then I think I'll play a little ranked play, because we certainly need that. Gamatsu, I think, is trying to make some catch up after Golden Week, and I guess perhaps all of the game industry in Japan is trying to catch up in the Golden Week. I don't know if it's video game related so much, because it's not like Chinese companies make video games, but the US-China trade war has escalated, and it's gone from what I think was a 10%, from what I understand, tax on some things that were more industry focused, like things that would have been bought by companies to make a final product, to now closer to a 25% tax on pretty much everything, to generalize, and that includes a lot of end user focused things like toys that would have been manufactured and made in China are going to be more expensive. That being said, I don't know if any products are particularly made in China as far as pressing and finalizing a CD, DVD, Blu-ray game disc. Maybe some of the limited edition collection items, like the little kitschs and statues and figurines, maybe some of that is made in China. Tote bags, things like that. So there might be a spike or less limited edition box sets made or a spike in price. That wouldn't really be a bad thing. If physical toys are more expensive, that might very well help the video game industry. Extremely young children still play with physical toys, but I would imagine most kids by the age of 6 are all about watching YouTube and Twitch and playing video games and playing games on cell phones. So a decrease or an increase in expense or decrease of availability of physical toys probably not going to affect too much. The reason why I imagine game discs are not pressed in China would be because it would be so easy to have those game discs stolen and leaked to torrent sites. But I wouldn't. I have no certainty about if that's really how things are done. But I suppose it's worth mentioning. Certainly, in the other aspect, a trade war between the United States and China is not going to improve China's attitude on approving video games, either from internal Chinese game developers or from external non-Chinese game developers.
Your magic shall not save you.
But then again, this whole story is kind of circular, and in part, some of the reasons why people in the United States are pro a trade war with China is because of China's actions on some things, particularly forced technology transfer, and forcing external companies to do business with Chinese companies that they don't want to do business with, and give code to Chinese companies when they don't want to give their proprietary code to Chinese companies. So yeah, I could go into probably a bigger rant there, but it's not video game related, so I'd say seek out wiser, more informed sources than me. Let's see. Gamatsu has another article. Sumiko Garashi, Gakko Seikatsu Hajime Run Desu has been announced for the Switch. This seems like this is a very early game for little kids. It's probably based on a it's probably based on a cartoon that I would not have any knowledge of. It is kind of the example of, yes, there are kid animes out there, they just don't come to the West or get translated. That's why all anime outside of Japan feels like it's focused on a mature teenager to straight adults only rating, with a small exception of like Hamtaro. This is probably also a Switch game that I don't see any reason why it would come to the West, like unless this cartoon is on TV somewhere in the West. This is probably one that's going to be an exclusive. Let's see, destroy damaged minion and rush. Destroy a damaged minion. And do this. Do that. Yep. Next we have a game on Steam called Immure. Immure. Looks like it is a psychological horror point and click style adventure game. But there's a level of art here that I think I'll be generous enough to give a follow. Unfortunately, this also kind of falls under dark screenshot syndrome, where it's just super dark. And perhaps there's a problem with the way some of this gets presented. Presented on the blue background of the Steam page. This is $7.99 in English, this is only language. Yeah, maybe some of these dark screenshots would make more sense elsewhere.
What now?
Let's see. Gordon's wall. I should have attacked first. There we go. Gamatsu has an article here. Kind of Funny showcase for E3 is set for June 10th. Kind of Funny Games, a podcast that, I mean, I could go into their drama, but I think it would be more easy to just say that they are very industry friendly podcast built out of people who I believe worked in the video game industry, and thus they've been given a spotlight in sort, kind of also because their E3 is just losing spots. So when you look here at the full schedule, and this will actually work rather well, you have Microsoft at 1 p.m. on June 9th, then Bethesda Softworks, who clearly deserves to be there, at 5:30 p.m. June 9th. So there's a 4.5 hour difference between these two presentations. That does not mean Microsoft is going to go for 4.5 hours. If anything, it'll probably go for an hour at most, and then there'll be a 3.5 hour point in which people will walk around the Microsoft booths and play games. Let's see, I need to play a little bit here. First. Oops. This. Then this. And then this. And can I do this 2 more times? I mean, I could. So after the June 9th 5:30 Bethesda Softworks, there's nothing more on that day. The next day you have the PC Gaming Show from PCGamer.com, and like, they really shouldn't be having a show either. The only slight justification that they have any relevancy is that they are trying to show off games that would be PC exclusives and indie games, which that's kind of the only slot for that. That being said, a PC exclusive and an indie game probably isn't going to get much press regardless, in between all the big announcements between Microsoft, Bethesda, Ubisoft, and Square Enix. But that happens at 10 a.m. and then at noon you have limited run games, which they are new too, and they take indie games that have been ported to consoles and make limited runs of just a few thousand. So they would get probably more coverage than any indie game that is a PC exclusive, but they really don't matter. So these two presentations probably shouldn't exist and really don't matter. And then you get to the 1 p.m. Ubisoft announcements. Almost certainly Ubisoft will have something to say there, but again, I'm not sure if it's enough. Let's see. I imagine what Ubisoft will announce is there's probably maybe a teaser of Watch Dogs 3, their new space game that they teased from Watch Dogs 2, a new Assassin's Creed something, whether it's a new game or just expansion. I imagine it's a new game. And then I imagine Ubisoft will have a couple of small indie things that they're publishing or helping fund, which I guess wouldn't make it actually indie at that point. And then you have the Kind of Funny game showcase that's happening at 4:30, 3.5 hours later, and I have no idea what they could possibly be showing off that wouldn't a PC game. Well, I guess the thing to mention here is Kind of Funny Games had a show called P.S. I Love You or something along that line, and they love PlayStation games. So I imagine anything that is more of a PlayStation exclusive will show up on the Kind of Funny Games showcase. And so PlayStation is kind of getting its cake and eating it too in that way. And then you're going to have Square Enix at 6 p.m. later that day. And then Square Enix, I don't think they own Hitman anymore, so it'd be really early to announce another Deus Ex game. I imagine this is going to be talking a lot about the Final Fantasy games and some of the more Japanese Square Enix game, Square Enix game. I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually very, very little otherwise. Let's see, double the damage and healing power of your hero. That's useless. Go ahead and do this. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's not too much announcing on Square Enix's case. Let's see, the interesting, like, crazy things that could happen is Microsoft comes out with several Microsoft titles that you're not expecting. If they were going to say, hey, we already have Crackdown 4 in development, or we've got a new Killer Instinct in development, or let's see, the Halo game we already know about, so they'll probably go very heavy on that. That wouldn't be too crazy. If Microsoft says, hey, we have 5 new games that you've never heard of from just new IPs in development, that's not, wouldn't even be super surprising, but it would be nice to hear. Certainly.
Reactor core online.
But yeah, I don't know what Microsoft can announce that's too crazy, short of saying we're not making an Xbox 2 at all, or we're just going straight to streaming the PC. If Bethesda comes out and they say we've got a new IP that's not in the Fallout or Elder Scrolls universe, that would be great, as long as it's not a mobile game. If Microsoft talked about mobile games, people would hate that. If limited run games came out and they had limited runs of some really big titles, that would be weird, certainly. Why would you make a limited run of something that would probably sell 1 million copies? If Ubisoft came out and said they're not making anything from Ubisoft anymore and they've got 5 new IPs, that would be surprising. If Square Enix came out and said they had 5 new IPs, that would be surprising. I guess it would be surprising for new IPs for anybody. Ubisoft and Square Enix in particular would be much less likely to do that than Microsoft would, and Bethesda would also be unlikely to do that. Let's see. You can play this.
You didn't need that, did you?
Well, that was crazy. Let's see. I probably should have played this, actually. Come to think of it. No reason to let him get 2 hits in and then give him 3 more hits. So, yeah. For all of E3, I think it is mostly in Microsoft's court. They're going to set the pace as the first presenter. if they've got nothing big to show, then I bet nobody has anything big to show. I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. 2019 I said was going to be the year of bankruptcies and layoffs, and so looking towards 2020, 2021, 2022, I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be a slower pace as far as game development and releases. Also, I would argue there's a lot of things that were probably announced even 2 E3s ago that still aren't out, let alone last E3. So that is another thing to keep in the back of your mind, is that a lot of these E3 presentations are more about hype for games that aren't even close to actually coming out. Let's see. Well,
Face me, you adult amateur.
I doubt I'm gonna win here. Moving on, Komatsu has an article. Bubsy's Paws of Fire for the Switch has been delayed to the summer. Bubsy, though, is not a good game. Like, as a series, it seems like Bubsy is probably one of the worst series. The PlayStation 4 and PC versions are on track for May 16th. From what I understand, or what I vaguely recall, I think what happened is some holding company got the rights to the Bubsy game series and is trying to make new games to sell off of the name recognition. Not that there really is much name recognition for Bubsy.
Defend the gates! To me!
Hit that. Hit that, I guess. Next, we have a game on Steam called Caterpillar Royale, which is clearly a low-effort Caterpillar snake clone with maybe some other gameplay methods in it, but really not trustworthy when you're putting Royale in the name. Certainly, $4.99 for this game. It's visually, maybe from the screenshot, I would give it $1.99. But some of these other screenshots clearly show it's not good quality. I lost there, but that's not a big deal because we did get 2 wins before this point. Let's see. GameIndustry.biz has this article. Fig announces open-ended crowdfunding program Open Access. The campaign structure removes the 30-day limitations, ties funding to a development roadmap instead. Previously, Fig was this, as I understood it, it was a 2-tiered system in which you were either an investor who could get maybe a small amount of money back based on the sales of something that was funded through Figs, or you were an accredited investor and you filed a bunch of paperwork with the US government to be an accredited investor, just to prove that you have enough money to actually be investing into a product, and you were putting in like tens of thousands of dollars into the funding of a game, and you were getting I assume a higher percentage or some larger amount of money back. Maybe it didn't even work that way. Maybe if you were a low tier investor, you weren't getting anything back other than maybe a copy of the game. Fig certainly was trying to cut out the middleman because it's being run by people. The board at Fig is people who work in the video game industry in particular, but it has not really developed any major successes except for Psychonauts 2, which the CEO of Double Fine is on the board of Fig, and that's the only reason why Psychonauts 2 is on Fig. And that's only really going to be success if that game gets finished, gets put out, it gets well received. Like, if that's not the case, then if it never gets finished or anything, then Fig would be, in my mind at least, a complete and total failure. And I think this is probably an admittance that their organization of it has been a failure. The article goes, Fig used to be a traditional 30-day or near to it limitation for projects on its platform, allowing a game to get funded if it met its goal within the time period. To differentiate from other platforms, Fig also permitted uncredited investors to support the project in return for revenue shares upon the project's completion. The open access program does away with the time limitations for projects and replaces it with an open-ended ongoing funding tied to the development roadmap and feature milestones, which means somebody like Yandere Simulator probably could use Fig if he was allowed on Fig, which I imagine he isn't, for years and years. And as long as you have a roadmap that is generic enough for you to be able to accomplish those small things when they need to be accomplished, that would be fine. Because there's so much wiggle room in the idea. If you put on the roadmap like interactive NPCs, you could easily program one interactive NPC that would talk back to you through like a dialogue wheel or something, without having done any of the other work to do any of the writing or any of the programming for any of the other NPCs that might be in the game if it ever reached a final product. And then you would have met that roadmap. And yeah, it would be incredibly easy to stretch the development of a game out forever, and sucker a decent number of people into continuously funding things. This basically turns this from it turns Fig from being like Kickstarter into something more like Patreon, where you're just constantly asking on a monthly basis for money. Although I guess in this case I don't think they're going as far as having well, let's do this then. Having every single payment reoccur on a monthly basis. Yeah, I wish I could play that one more time, because then I would have killed this guy and drawn this guy a new card, so I could have
My hand is too full.
done that one more time. The two titles beginning in this campaign using this model will be a 2D strategic RPG called Vargas the Riven Realms, and a tower defense title called Peg Leg starting May 15th. So the tower defense game immediately. There's a quote here: the traditional crowdfunding structure no longer works for video games, and a 30-day campaign isn't enough time to properly build long-lasting awareness for an indie game, says the Fig founder Justin Bailey. Interesting, funny name. I wonder if that might actually be the Justin Bailey who worked at Nintendo and theoretically might have been the reason why that code worked in Metroid, although Justin Bailey also is an old school way of saying naked, or in your underwear. and most people tend to accept that reason more than anything else. The problem with this idea to say a 30-day campaign isn't enough time to properly build a long-lasting awareness for an indie game puts Fig in the position where it says it's an advertisement platform advertising a game. The truth of the matter is, as far as I understand it, if you're going to have a successful Kickstarter, which, let's face it, almost none of them are, because you don't have satisfied customers or repeat business at the end of the day. But the one thing you would have expected from a successful Kickstarter is the first day would have had a major influx of money. And this is the same for politics too, is that like in the United States, Joe Biden was taking his sweet time to get into the election run, presidential campaign run, because he wanted to have, in my opinion, as much money donated and collected before he said he's actually running. Same is true for Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden was probably trying to beat the number of contributions that Bernie Sanders had. So that day one hype of like, we've got over $1 million already committed, will do a large bit of good for any kind of public funding campaign. And most Kickstarters push for that really hard. They have social medias going for months before the Kickstarter starts. They get people hyped and on an email list, and they get them ready to go. And then when they launch their Kickstarter, it gets a bunch of income immediately, and that extra bit of income immediately puts it on the front page, the trending page of Kickstarter, which then allows it to get even more eyes in front of it, which becomes this snake eating its own tail scenario where you're constantly going to see more and more success because of just the hype. It's similar to the idea of a lot of old YouTubers used to buy views and buy subs, which assumedly YouTube catches people for doing that now. But then they got popular enough from the fake views and the fake subs that they became actually popular. And I wouldn't be surprised if people like the Paul brothers in particular bought a bunch of fake likes and views. But yeah, Fig's original concept, clearly a failure. Their new concept, I think also, it's really gone for more of a Patreon model. Now, arguably, you could make a good argument here that Patreon is becoming less and less trusted because they're slowly kicking off more and more people. They're not as bad as I imagine Facebook or Twitter have been, but Patreon went from a rock solid, we're gonna let almost anybody on our sites, to having instances of, okay, we're not gonna let gravure models and lewd models have Patreons because they're putting nude or semi-nude pictures on their Patreon, which, okay, that got cleared up, or it felt like it was cleared up, and they said, okay, well, we can sell these type of photo shoots, but we can't put any of the screenshots on your website. Alright, we got it. Then it seemed like they changed their tune again on that, and this was like a year or two ago that happened. And then specifically they started cutting off more people that they politically did not agree with Patreon for what seemed like definitely were actions that were not taken on the Patreon platform or had anything to do with the Patreon platform. And so Patreon has become yet another ideological minefield of, can you really trust it? That being said, I do have a Patreon. I still haven't had any takers on it. No big surprise there. It would have been really nice if people did sign up for that. And I had like 5 people that were donating even $1 a month. But yeah. A lot of these funding services, they all seem to have their own problems. And on a bigger case, I would say there's a problem of the fact that people just don't have money. People are broke, and on all levels, unless you are the 0.001% of the United States, you're broke. You're certainly not starving in Ghana or something in the middle of Africa or anything. You're not that broke. But as a first world country, most of the people are below that poverty level in the United States, and they just don't have money. And even if people are spending money, they often don't have the money to spend on that money. They really shouldn't be spending that money, is what I meant to say. The same argument could be made for a lot of these Chinese games. It's like, I don't know how much money Chinese citizens really should be spending on frivolous things like games, like video games. They should be saving their money. Although, I don't know how much of their money has any real backing or standard short of the Chinese government. I wouldn't be surprised if it's all fake and printed, and if the Chinese baking industry went out of business, went through major, not out of business, but just like major trouble, and there was a boom or a collapse, a financial collapse. I wouldn't be surprised if nearly 100% of all wealth disappeared, and nearly all the banks in China shut down. I don't even know if they have any kind of legal protection like the FDIC. But yeah, regardless of what country you're in, you probably should just be saving your money for a rainy day always. Talking specifically about this Chinese game, this is clearly another game based on the Three Kingdoms novel. It's mixed, it's early access, English is not supported, they want $4.67. And it looks like an RPG, well, not an RPG maker actually, it looks more like just a terrible strategy game with a lot of text on it. Maybe with some placement battle simulations of very low interest. I was trying certainly to go through a lot of the games and that came out, and a lot of them look like low effort games, so this today will be more of a filtered experiment than normal. Not really gonna look at every game that came out. And going forward, that might be the case, because if we're having slow weeks right now during pre-E3, once E3 comes out, we're gonna have a lot of news to talk about, and covering low effort games on Steam really isn't worth it. Moving on, Gematsu has an article, Dragon Star Varnier, Elixir's Gifts and Madness level screenshots. This is a game that they're putting out more screenshots for. Standard Japanese advertisement. I would argue, though, I think the Japanese advertisement strategy is probably a little bit better than the Western advertisement idea, because they give more details and they focus on specific things instead of just putting out a trailer and saying that's good enough to sell a game. Dragonstar Veneer is due out for the PS4 on June 11th in North America and June 14th in Europe. And I think these low quality image screenshots are supposed to be tiny, and there's something that's wrong with the way the page is being depicted. I must choose. Let's do this. And do this. Next we have a game on Steam called Cell Defender, and this looks like it's some acid folks fighting each other, and it does not look good. And maybe these are supposed to be you're fighting germs inside of a body. It's 10% off for $3.59. Yep. Does not look quality, does not pass that visual test. Alright. Okay. Maybe we'll start covering the specific announcements from the Sony State of Play. 5 of 9. Sony announces Away, the survival series. Away looked like a game where you're playing as a sugar glider, I believe is what those are. It's kind of like a squirrel or a flying squirrel, and you're just trying to survive in an environment. I imagine this is probably a pretty small island world that has been pre-made, and it isn't just an infinitely generating thing. It looks like it's sort of a platformer with some boss battles, and it doesn't seem like you change to any other animal. It's coming out for the PS4 and the PlayStation, and the PlayStation 4 and the PC. I wouldn't be surprised though if it's kind of nothing. Let's say rush.
Defend the gates.
Did that on the turn. And
I'm fast and furious.
so yeah, that was one game. There was about 4 others. We'll get to them throughout. Apparently the articles are not in order. It would have been nice if I had found just one article that talked about the entire state of play. I did fast forward through it on YouTube, and there really wasn't a lot there. 5 damage to all non-mech cards. There we go. Gamasutra has an interesting article. According to, I guess, the ESRB, only 9% of ESRB rated games were deemed mature in 2019. Now, this is an example of selective bias in work, in action, because what is not being mentioned here is the fact that most of the mature rated games, and particularly adults only games, which I don't think there's been an adults only rated ESRB game in years, most mature rated games aren't coming to consoles and thus don't need an ESRB rating and are just going to PC. And I would argue that we are probably getting to the point where a teen plus rated game is the equivalent of what a mature rated game would have been in previous times. Like in the old days, a PG-13 game real PG-13 movie felt like it definitely was parental guidance for a 13-year-old. Now something PG-13 can run very close up to being rated R and just edit out that one thing that takes it over the line. And so we've introduced this concept that is something I never heard of until a few like a year ago. The idea of a hard R movie that is specifically going to try and have an R rating. Compared to movies also, we haven't had an NC-17 rated movie come out for wide release in probably decades at this point. In a very, well, it couldn't have been decades, but it's been a very, very long time. Because, yeah, everybody knows that your movie won't get into theaters if it's NC-17. Let's see. Just gonna go ahead and do this. I guess this.
Let the pain speak to me.
So yeah, that certainly will explain why only 9% of ESRB rated games were rated mature. I'd kind of like to see what the titles were that were rated mature, because it was probably the AAA games like God of War and such. I'm sure those were rated M, but it says in 2018, 2,768 games were assigned content ratings. That's a sizable jump from 1,948 in 2017 and 1,491. So this might really just be a correction for a lot of E for Everyone mobile games asking for ratings, but I thought they were getting rid of their system and making it more expensive too. Let's see. It was so previously the year it was 13% were rated M. Everyone rated games jumped up from last year 42% from 34%. So yeah, there's
Magic neutralized.
So yeah, the reduction in M-rated games percentage-wise may really be more of a case of just more E for Everyone, E for Everyone 10 plus, and teen-rated games for mobile in particular, and maybe the Switch in a smaller number. I love to see this happen, frankly, because what this means is that there's simply fewer, well, not fewer, but more variety of content available for a wider audience. And I've always felt like we should have more kids games that are good. Now the question is, just because we're having more kids games or rated E for Everyone games, which is really how you should take that that announcement, does that mean those games are good, or does that mean that there's just a bunch of kids games coming out that might have horrible microtransactions or just horrible quality of game in general in it? Because that's certainly something ESRB is refusing to look at and deal with. If a actual loot box ban happened for games targeted to younger people, in the United States, we very possibly would run into a scenario where
Drink with me, friend.
we very possibly might run into a scenario where you're running into people. What am I trying to say? I've lost the plot. Yeah, what I was trying to say, sorry, I'm not awake. I slept in late and I'm still not awake. The point I was trying to make is that if we saw an end of loot boxes and gambling targeted towards kids on mobile games, if they really cracked down on that, I wouldn't be surprised if we immediately also saw a return to the previous numbers as far as how many games in percentage-wise were rated mature versus how many games were rated E for everyone or less than mature in general. Particularly, I wouldn't be surprised if any legislation actually did make it through the United States, if they said specifically we're going to enforce this rule by saying a game has to be rated M for mature if it has any microtransactions in it at all, then you would see probably a skyrocketing change of games that were previously rated E for everyone skyrocket up to M for mature. Moving on, another thing that at the PlayStation presentation is that they'll be selling this Days of Play limited edition PS4. This was really the only hardware announcement that they talked about. It seems rather ridiculous and feels like this was probably a project that they just wanted to get off of their schedule and move forward towards PlayStation 5. That it probably was something that they would have done earlier, and it was either delayed or they didn't realize that they were that close to announcing and releasing a PlayStation 5. The idea of buying a PlayStation 4 right when the PlayStation 5 has been announced is kind of silly, particularly if it's going to be a new limited edition one. Really should be, it would make a lot more sense to either save up for a PlayStation 5 or buy a used like PlayStation 4. I'm going to switch over to the European account instead of playing ranked, just in case the European account decides to be a pain in the butt. Another thing at the Sony State of Play, TechRaptor has this article, 5 of 9, Square Enix drops the Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer, which confused me because these characters I thought were from Final Fantasy 13, and it seems like they've done some major improvements, and I can't really show this because this will just get content ID'd almost certainly by Square Enix, but it looks like it has been majorly improved visually, and it does seem like you're probably not going to have any of the systems from Final Fantasy VII. I think that's probably going to be a taking of Final Fantasy 13 style of gameplay and putting it here. Let's see, Rogue and Rogue are what we need to play. We did all the tavern brawls. Yeah. Alright. So Rogue play. The thing I would say about Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I assume is going to be in a somewhat exclusive, console-wise at least, to to PlayStation. I don't think it's coming to the Xbox or the Switch, but I wouldn't be surprised if it actually did. It probably will eventually come to the PC. I'm still in that weird holding position with Final Fantasy. I'm not sure if I should play the remaster to Final Fantasy VII and just that's it. Should I just play the 3.13 games? Should I do something different, or should I just avoid Final Fantasy completely? Being a JRPG, even with the new combat system, it still probably is going to be an extremely long game to play. This would summon one Murlocs. Let's do this. Let's hit that. Gamatsu has an article, third-person adventure game Away Survival Series was announced. We already talked about this, so I don't think there's anything else you need to mention here. It says, you become a sugar glider, you explore a rich ecosystem, and it has an enchanting musical score, you immerse yourself in nature. So yeah, it doesn't seem like you ever change animals, and so it probably is a pretty linear experience, if I was to guess.
I can wait and finish all day.
We'll do that. And then roll in there. Gamatsu has the same article, Final Fantasy VII Remake State of Play trailer. Some screenshots. Yeah, the graphics look better, certainly. But unless they're gonna remove all the random battles and drastically change how you get experience so you don't have to grind, I don't know how you do anything else. Let's see, I'm gonna do this. So
Here we go.
So I can do this. Gamatsu has the Medieval Remake, launches October 25th, and this was their big selling point at the State of Play, was the Medieval Remake, which, yeah, has a trailer, and it looks like it might be a fine game, but I really would put this at a remake of a single A game that, yeah, it'll be more polished, but I don't think it's gonna catch many people's attention. The weird thing here is PlayStation never and Sony never really succeeded at having a line of intellectual properties that they owned that people cared about. Sure, Crash Bandicoot was the attempt at that, but then they abandoned Crash Bandicoot pretty fast.
Good tickets don't come cheap.
So yeah,
Here we go.
there's a lack of things that Sony can remake without having to license something else, and I don't think that they particularly want to have to license something to make a remake just to have some kind of first party titles. And inherently, now that Sony is irritating their Japanese publishers and developers, the lack of first party titles is going to be a much bigger issue. If this Sony State of Play had happened and Sony of Japan was still running Sony Entertainment Interactive or Interactive Entertainment, then you would have almost certainly led, at the very least, with the Square Enix Final Fantasy remake, and you would have gone heavy in Japanese-centric, Japanese-focused games. Instead, you're in this position where you're...
No refunds.
Let's kill that, I guess. This one can hit that one.
Desperate seas I roam. Let me go home.
So yeah, if Sony Japan was doing this day of play, you could have easily added at least 3 visual novels in there that were coming out to the PlayStation 4, because I'm sure there are at least 3 that would have caught somebody's. You could have focused on a Senran Kagura game that almost certainly is the next one that's coming out. Yeah, there is one coming out, I know. You could have gone with Dead or Alive fighting games and gone in a direction that was more lewd centric, certainly, instead of having, let's see, having a game where you play as a skeleton, having a game where you play as a sugar glider. I mean, there are very few games that were even announced where you see human creatures, which makes it kind of unrelatable. You would have probably been pushing Monster Hunter World to get away from the lewd Japanese games. Just like the new expansion for Monster Hunter World should have been pushed more than it's talked about, and we haven't even talked about it yet. Let's see. That goes back. That dies. And let's see, what else do we want to do? Just kill that while we're at it. And that.
Here we go.
Next article we have from Gamatsu: Sony and IllFonic announced Predator Hunting Grounds for the PS4. I don't think the graphics look particularly great here, and it's odd to make a Predator tie-in game when I don't think there's a Predator movie in development right now. And it's just, so here you see the masked faces of military men, one assumes, and it zooms out and you see the just kind of visual warble of a cloaked predator, and so just a little bit of a tease, and that's all you get for that game. And I wouldn't be surprised if something like this game gets talked about more at a different presentation at E3. Wouldn't really be surprised if it turns out that several of these games get more coverage at E3. Stepping away from the Sony State of Play, which was probably the biggest news in the past couple days, Gamasutra has an article. Get a Job Sanzuro Games is hiring a junior gameplay engineer in Foster City, California. So a junior programmer requires at least 1 or 2 years of industry experiences. So in effect, that means you can never hire anybody out of college in this field. You need to be proficient in C++. C++ still probably the core programming language for video game programming. but you also have working Unreal knowledge of Unreal 4, which you can program C++ in the Unreal Engine 4, but there's more to it on top of that. Strong 2D and 3D math skills, which I'm not sure if there are too many classes that teach 3D math skills in college. Physics knowledge, competent physics knowledge. The ability to blend into and extend an existing code base, so work off somebody else's terrible coding. That's help in any programming. You must be an avid gamer, which I would argue shouldn't be required, frankly. And the ability to collaborate with team members that bring gameplay to life, which means you have to pretty much be an SJW. I'm joking there, but that kind of is what that means, is that if you come in and you're possibly just not spouting the same extremely progressive liberal type of talk that everybody else is spouting, you might easily be deemed not a good fit. Like, ideally, in any programming job or any job, it's just we don't talk about religion, we don't talk about politics. It's blatant rule, easy, makes it easier for people to get along. If I owned a business, well, I guess I kind of do, but if I had employees, that's pretty much what I would say. And it's also something I probably would somewhat struggle with, too. But I suspect inside of video game companies, or most of them, that is exactly the opposite of what happens. Alright. But even more concerning, a junior gameplay engineer requiring 1 or 2 years of experience is ridiculous. This was probably the weirdest game shown at the State of Play. The 3D voxel-based world of Riverbond. It seems to be a hack and slash dungeon crawler with voxel graphics, like people like voxel graphics. It looks like it's just a mobile game. Clearly this is a filler game. Now this game does have characters, like indie characters like Bastion and Shovel Knight, that they made voxel based versions of, but that should not be a main selling point on your game. In fact, it has all of these indie developed characters. But yeah, this was by far the most boring announcement, and none of these announcements were none of them felt like they were more than 3 minutes long, quite frankly. None of them really felt like you were doing a lot of work. Or getting a lot of info. TechRaptor has another one, medieval release date announced, so let's get the release date and then move on.
Valera versus Valera.
Where is it? It'll release for the PS4 on October 25th. So, being probably a Halloween tie-in game, it's weird that they are putting it on the 25th. I see that a lot for Halloween tie-in games. It feels like you should always put out your game around October 1st. That would make a lot more sense. But waiting till the end or to the actual day of Halloween, not really helpful if you're trying to get into the mood, or if you're into the mood of Halloween already. Let's see. This is probably the most important announcement that happened. Monster Hunter World Iceborne expansion launches September 26th for PS4, Xbox One, and winter for PC. So apparently it's only going to be thematically appropriate or seasonally accurate for the PC. I wouldn't be surprised if this Iceborne expansion came out last year, but I would have thought people would have talked about it if it happened last winter. So it's just going to be oddly delayed. But see, this was the big announcement for the Sony State of Play, and it's not even a PS4 exclusive. Monster Hunter World, super popular, super successful game worldwide. That being said, I don't know if maybe the hype has in part died down outside of Japan for it. I don't know if this would bring a lot of Western players back if they've gotten tired of Monster Hunter World. And it certainly does feel like that the Monster Hunter World expansion release dates have been pushed back and pushed back. So I don't feel like it's been as well supported as it should have been. And yeah, I don't know if there's much else to say. Let's see. For newcomers, Monster Hunter World Iceborne Master Edition contains both the main game and the Iceborne expansion. For existing customers, the expansion is $39.99 US dollars. Unless you buy the deluxe edition, which has some cosmetic items.
I fight.
The pre-order bonus is a special Yukomo series layered armor set bonus that's available exclusively for early bird customers. Yeah, the thing about Monster Hunter is, ideally I want a super simplified Monster Hunter experience, in the same way that I kind of would want a super simplified Skyrim experience. As these games get older and they're not fresh out of the oven products, and you're trying to I'm trying to play so many games, the grind that you would see in something like Monster Hunter World in particular is very, very high, and the same is true for Final Fantasy. Tech Raptor has the same articles with maybe some different pictures, and I would argue also that this is just like the entire presentation on YouTube. The thing you would take from adding a snow expansion in particular is that there's just going to be a lot of snow and a lot of white on white on white. And so visually it might be a little bit more dull than you're used to. Let's see. There we go.
Goodbye.
There we go. Tech Raptor has the same article, Predator Hunting Grounds. I'm bouncing between Tech Raptor and Gematsu saying the same articles, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if Tech Raptor in particular is just getting all of its information from Gematsu. Oh, but I mean, it's all coming from the same State of Play announcement, so. Let's see, this, and this.
Nothing.
Deal 3. There we go. We've got a game on Steam called Andro Malice. This looks like this is very possibly a low-effort horror asset flip game. Like, the only thing that would possibly convince me otherwise would be this trailer. And at this point, when I just see a game like this $4.99, I'm not even willing to put a game like this on the follow list, because there has not been a single example that I can think of a horror game where you're just wandering around and doing nothing else actually being super successful, popular, or liked in any way at all. So I'm gonna hold these style of games to possibly a higher standard than most games, just because I'm really tired of seeing games like that and pretending or like I'm gonna put them on the follow list and like they're actually gonna get reviews when they really aren't. And that's probably a lesson I need to learn before I go through the follow list and do some cleanup work, because when I do the cleanup work, I imagine I should remove a bunch of games like that are on the follow list. Gamasutra has an article here. Google Play Store tweaks its rating system to focus on recent reviews. This is probably a good idea because certainly some games and programs on the Google Play Store put out some major changes and that irritate people. In fact, there's one piece of software that put out a major change. Basically, the original developer, I think, sold the rights to the software to another developer. The other developer decided to change everything horribly. Everybody hated it. In the beta process, everybody hated the change. They did it anyways, and they've stuck with that change for years and done nothing new with the program. So I've been using this old software I've been using this old version of the software for years now. Like, I'm on the 4th, maybe 5th phone I have installed via just side-loaded the old version of the software on, because it is so different, and it's perfectly fine software in the old version. There's really no reason to have ever upgraded it. And weirdly, that kind of is the case for all the apps I have on my phone. It's like, I've got all the apps I think I probably will ever need. I might try a new game here and there when I get bored, but as far as just getting things done, I've met my needs on my phone. And in fact, I barely do anything new with my phone anyways. It's just listening to podcasts, browsing a few web pages, playing games, and watching YouTube. And like, there's no longer a big need to oops, I could have done that better. No longer is there a big need to have a more powerful CPU or more RAM or bigger screen or faster connection speeds on a cell phone. I remember having the G1 phone, which was like the first Google phone, and yeah, every update of Android, every little new software, everything were major improvements because it was this new baby of a operating system. But now it's pretty baked in, and there's not much that can be added that wouldn't just be annoying little changes. In the same way that Windows 10 really didn't add anything of interest to me compared to Windows 7 or Windows 8. Let's see. Just send this guy back.
Here
course, I guess that has very little to do with video games. I went into more of an Android rant. Moving on, Gamma Citra has an article. Hugo Barr steps down as the Oculus head for a new Facebook AR VR role, which I suspect what this means is there's a good chance that Oculus as a brand will be shut down, and the department under the title of Oculus within Facebook will be shut down. Google did a similar thing. They've pretty much completely eliminated Nest as being a separate independent company that they owned and integrated it finally into Google in general, and Google hardware division. And I imagine most people saw that coming. With Oculus not really doing anything great under Facebook, and there being lawsuits, I could see them just trying to shake things up at Facebook and get rid of some dead weight. This is probably a slow layoff process that was planned even when Facebook acquired Oculus too, is that they'll eventually just determine that some jobs are redundant and get rid of people.
Here we go.
I need to kill as many minions as I can. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called BL00, which I suppose is supposed to be pronounced blue. This looks like this is a platformer. This game does not quite pass the visual test. It's a little too soft pixels. It looks a lot like Bomberman 64 in some places. Perhaps I'm being a little ungenerous. Maybe I should give this a follow. This might be good. Wants $6.39 right now, discounted. I'll give this a follow, but I'm being generous on that because this is barely a high enough level of quality. Let's see.
Here we go.
Want to kill as many minions as possible and play as many rogue cards as possible. So here's an example of a terrible low effort game called Watch Paint Dry. And see, these are the kind of games that I generally would just close in an effort to save time, because clearly, just on the title, you know this is not a game worth purchasing. It's 79 cents discounted. It has 6 achievements. It's a troll game. It's a low effort game. Maybe it's not a troll game. Maybe it's just a really, really low effort game. Right here.
Who goes there?
And here.
Here we
Kill
go.
that. TechRaptor has a big piece of news here. Sega has acquired 2 Point Studios, developer of 2 Point Hospital, which is weird, but I guess not super surprising. If you make a game and it's moderately successful, but probably not successful enough to not successful enough to fund another game, because I don't think 2 Point Hospital sold enough to be to really fund that. It makes sense that a bigger company would come and acquire you. There are some big ticket names behind it. People who worked at Bullfrog Productions and Lionhead Studios. So people that would have worked on Dungeon Keeper at Bullfrog. I assume that's the same Bullfrog, and people that worked on Fable at Lionhead work together. There's also some other developers who worked on things like Black and White, Alien Isolation, and Fable. So there's some big ticket names there. Considering how much coverage by the mainstream media was being put on 2 Point Hospital and as a spiritual successor to another hospital game that was pretty old that they didn't, I think, have the rights to. I wouldn't be surprised if Sega was helping promote that game also, but that might just really have been more the fact that all of the employees at 2 Point Studios seem to have so many connections already with people, with video game reviewers, because they had worked at other companies and already dealt with these video game reviewers. They, by that cronyism and that pre-existing connection, they just did a much better job promoting what was effectively an indie game than most indie developers can accomplish. Most indie developers get 0 articles. There was at least 2 or 3 weeks where 2 Point Hospital was getting articles on a weekly basis. TechRaptor in particular, I think, was talking about it quite a lot. Speaking of TechRaptor, Blood gets bloodier with Blood Fresh Supply. Apparently Blood is some kind of Doom clone. I've never heard of it before. This is another, like, almost the exact same instance. It's like, I've never heard of this game, yet you're making it out like this was a super popular game. But yeah, Blood Fresh Supply is on Steam, and it's from Night Dive Studios, which are known for republishing old games, and it's rated very positively. I don't remember any game called Blood though. There were so many Doom clones, and if you're just gonna bring back every single Doom clone, it's weird. And this apparently is a remaster or report of Blood. It doesn't seem like it really is a full game remaster. Alright. Need to play 2 more rogue cards, and then we're done with this account. And I don't think we'll be breaking up episodes today either. Let's see. It says here, originally by Monolith Production, this 1997 game got its remaster by Night Dive Studios, without whose prior releases include Forsaken Remaster and an enhanced Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. And yeah, that's pretty much all Night Dive does, is they do remasters of old games that are alright, but nothing really to write home about. Let's see, let's just trade out cards. So we have rogue cards at the beginning. Gamma Citra has an article here. Scopely acquires Digit Game Studios. I'm not sure I recognize either one of these companies. The acquisition builds a year-long partnership between the two companies that led to the 2018 release of Star Trek Fleet Command, which I assume is the VR game. So they work together, and then one acquired the other, as that often happens.
The light protects me.
Well, I guess I'll put Blood Fresh Supply on the fall list. I I guess it really comes down to, is it a smart move or make any sense at all to, or does it make any sense at all to have a series in which I just covered old Doom clones after I've covered the Doom games, spotlighting them. Like, I think I'd be particularly bad at spotlighting a Doom clone, because I would just be playing it for like 30 minutes and going, yeah, this feels a lot like a Doom clone, and that's pretty much all I think I could say about it.
I fight.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Sinker 2. I think I saw a game called Sinker 1 and I decided against it. This looks like it's a puzzle game, and I'm not opposed to puzzle games. It's discounted to $2.39. I guess we should look at Sinker 1. It has 12 achievements. Let's see what the original game is rated.
So many.
Well, it's rated very positively, so what I should do in this case is, since it's a sequel, is I should go back and see what I did with the first game. Did I put it on the wish list? Is it still on the fall list? If so, I'll put the first game in the wish list and we'll give it a chance from that perspective. But if it's not on the wish list, then that probably means I chose not to get it for some reason. And I don't know what the real reason would be for this one. It seems like it's a fine puzzle game. It doesn't seem like it's gonna be too boring. It's basically a hook on a line that's getting reeled in, and then some other interactions are happening. Seems like it's probably a Japanese port of a game. That would be my guess. Or maybe it's not. Maybe this is just they're just trying to make it very world focused, very global in its name titles. I imagine that is something that should be improved on the Steam storefront, is it being able to change the title of your game and the language of the page based on the language. It really doesn't make sense that there wouldn't be a button here that says translated from its original Japanese, click here to see the original, and then it just auto-translated, or a curated translated page would probably be better than an auto-translated page, but there's really no reason to not have some region detection based on just the language selection tool. Alright, let's see. We want to play a combo first. So, send that back. And do that.
As the master wishes.
And then kill that for fun.
I fight.
Kill that. So next we have this game on Steam called Game of Puzzles Dragons. This is probably name confusion between Puzzles and Dragons, or Dragons and Puzzles, and maybe some name confusion of games like Game of Thrones. It is a slider puzzle of dragons, which I haven't seen any lewd adult slider puzzles in a while. It's 59 cents. It's not something I'd actually recommend people get. It's obviously an achievement game with 68 achievements, of which each achievement is a number or a letter. But yeah, these bad games still are occurring, even if I'm possibly not covering them all. Although some of the bad games aren't. Like, it seems like every 2 weeks on Friday you get the adult games get approved, and then you get 13 days in which no adult game comes out at all. which, I mean, if that's just their internal process, that kind of sucks, certainly, because you'd want to spread out your announcements, but it's not terrible. I wish it was just every Friday instead of every other Friday. That would be better. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Big Ben Interactive announces its E3 2019 lineup. I don't know who Big Ben Interactive is, but apparently they will be showing Bee Simulator, Farmer's Dynasty, The Fisherman, Overpass Paranoia, Happiness is Mandatory, The Sinking City, I've heard of that one, and this one sounds interesting, and Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood, and WRC 8. So this isn't a presentation though, this is just what's going to be at their booth at E3. And there's plenty of game companies that will have booths at E3, most of which do not get reported on, so Gamatsu went a little further than normal there. Yeah, well, I've played enough cards here, so I don't really even need to pay too much attention to this. But we'll see what we can do. Overkill, draw 2 cards. Well, I have 6. I can rush to kill.
Desperate seas I roam. Let me go home. Here we go.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Swag and Sorcery, which looks like it is an RPG of some sort, mostly focused around loot. What's funny here is visually this actually does catch my attention a little bit, but then I look at the reviews and see it's already mixed, and it's $9.74 with a 25% discount. So I don't know what's... There's like 50 Steam achievements. That seems like a lot. Let's see what the negative reviews are. Lazy Bear Games is back with another gorgeous looking, mind-numbing grind of a game. Even in the era of mobile gaming and Eastern MMO, the team succeeds again at serving up an unbalanced, unrewarding, absurdly repetitive chore of a game from a game that's not usually this boring. Let's see. Was fun for the first 2 hours, not, but after that, not anymore. Okay, so just an extremely grindy game. It's weird to have such bad game design and yet have good graphics. Even if these are asset flips, it seems like this would have had enough polish visually for them to think, hey, let's find a better gameplay loop. I know it is difficult to find a good gameplay loop. It always is, but really there's something you could do there.
Let me go home.
I am free.
Anyways, Swag and Sorcery not making it to the fall list. Next we have a game on Steam called Ponpera and the Great Southern Labyrinth, which is a text-based game trying to hide in the trailer that it's a text-based game. Look at this trailer that has nothing to do with actually what you're going to see. We don't see a lot of these though. It used to be I would see like 1, 2, or 3 a week, and now I see one of these once every 2 months or so. They always want way too much, $4.89 discounted, and of course, being a text-based game, it can't really be that translated, and there doesn't look like there's a word count that I'm seeing here as far as how long this is. Let's see. Do this. Do this. And then do this. And then
You know good? Me too.
Hey, lights out.
and then return. Gamatsu has the same article, Blood Remaster, subtitled Fresh Supply, and it's now available. Apparently, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these Doom clone games all ran on a similar engine, and that's why they are being ported pretty easily by Night Dive. Because I don't... It would be a little weird, I suppose, if Night Dive was just running an emulator, a DOSBox style emulator on these games. Next we have a game on Steam called Pax Nova. It's already mixed. It looks like it's a turn-based strategy game. It's funny, last week there was, well, Wednesday, not last week, but there was an actual space game that I was willing to give a shot, and I put it on the follow list, and it's the first time I've done that in a long time. As for Pax Nova, well, it looks very pretty, and I would put it on the follow list. There's a problem clearly here. $22.49, that discounted for early access as a problem. But something else here. Short, funny version. The developers of this game heard just one more turn game play and assumed that meant the gameplay should consist of nothing other than clicking next turn. So apparently nothing happens turn to turn. According to that review. Alright, that kind of makes some sense if it's a boring gameplay. Corruption. Let's see here. This. 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 Didn't make it in time. Darn it. So yeah, Pax Nova not making it to the list. Next we have a game on Steam called Astro Lagster, which looks like it might be a story-based style of game, kind of like Reigns. Maybe based on astrology. It's a story-driven astrological comedy game set in Shakespearean London based on a true and truly ridiculous story. It looks visually interesting. It's $9.99. English is its only language. Apparently it won some kind of awards. This, I think, deserves a follow. This seems like it might be something worth playing at least once. Maybe after that first playthrough, it wears out its welcome pretty quickly. Let's see. Next we have Yakuza Kiwami 2 on Steam. This wasn't the guy. That was Judgment. Apparently this is just snuck out. Interesting. It's definitely a hard M. $29.99. The Kiwami series is the reboot series as I understand it, so this is effectively Yakuza 2 being remade and remastered. It's rated positively. There's no reason why this shouldn't be on the wish list. I pretty much can just skip even the follow list. Now, that's because I would like to support these very Japanese mafia-centric style games and Japanese culture-centric games, and also it's a weird style game. So I would be fine with owning the Yakuza series and never really getting around to playing it. Of course, that puts me always in this weird position where I'm probably buying too many games if I'm starting to say, well, I can own this without actually playing it. I'm trying to actually play all the games I own, and I'm doing a relatively decent job at that, or at least give them a shot. And if I did get around to actually playing the Yakuza Kiwami series, I think I'd probably enjoy it fine. It might be a little grindy. I might just run through the main story and avoid a lot of the side mission stuff. Alright. Well, I don't have anything here that I can re-roll, so I have 250s that are around secrets and spells. So if I just play Paladin ranked, I'll be fine. This pack is from the Watch and Learn on Wednesday. And if I finish daily quests, I think we'll probably leave some of the news for maybe Monday, although that would be kind of a mess. So all 5 of those cards were turned into dust. No surprise there. Alright, so rank, Paladin should be fine. Next we have a game on Steam called Bird Gut, which seems like it's half platformer, half puzzler, half other adventures. It seems kind of varied in the gameplay style when I was watching this trailer. You get swallowed by a bird and you're inside of its gut, and then you're platforming and escaping, and the art style, I would say, is kind of a uniquely different hand-drawn thing. This might be a little bit too difficult for my tastes, but it looks a lot like Limbo. It's rated positively. It's free, which I guess means I don't have to worry about it anymore. So yeah, if you want to play Bird Gut, that's available to you. Why didn't I thought I started the game. Apparently I didn't. Gamatsu has an article here. Let's see. It's supposed to be there. That's what I'm playing. Sinnoh Alice launches in June in the West. Sinnoh Alice apparently being a iOS Android game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a gacha game. Let's see. It's a dark retelling of classic fairy tales with unsettling fantasy world and games creator. There's a mobile game. Blah, blah, blah. What kind of mobile game is it, though? I might check this out on my phone. I won't make any footage of it or show it almost certainly, but I could see checking it out and giving it a try. If this is the thing I would say is, compared to like Destiny Child, which is more open-ended and you can just make new characters all this time, if each of these characters are based on a fairy tale creature, then you're pretty limited. Like, is this Red Riding Hood here? Little Red Riding Hood? Who is this in the slightly yellow skirt, or who would this be, or who would this be? It's kind of like Ruby in the same way as like
I'll never tell.
where it kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't make sense also, to try and add more characters. And if it is a gacha game, then that'll be a problem. Being called Sinnoh Alice, I guess Alice in Wonderland is probably going to be a main character. Let's see, I'll go to the official website and see if I can get some more details. just a play button with a video. Yeah, and that play video doesn't show anything at all.
I wonder.
Let's see, characters. Click characters. Really don't have time to be doing all this.
Move quickly.
So apparently this is Alice, the one in blue. And then if I click this, this is Red Riding Hood. I got that one right. This is Snow White. Okay, now that I see a bigger picture, that makes sense. This is Princess Kaguya, which not really a fairy tale creature, more of a Japanese fairy tale creature. This is Sleeping Beauty. I would have really never guessed that, the one in yellow. This is Hansel Gretel. And this is Pinocchio. And this is Cinderella. See, this is the kind of idea where you've got those characters, and it was rated M for mature. And in case you missed that, you've got those characters, but I don't know how you expand on that and make a gacha game. So it's probably going to be more of a grindy RPG game. And then if that's the case, then I don't know if they would, if I'd want to play a grindy RPG style game or dungeon crawler style game in on a cell phone. That seems kind of like the worst place that you'd want to play an RPG. And I would say that Destiny Child has the ability to play itself completely automatically, which makes it a great game for me. It's like I can add it, I can just have it run by itself in the background most of the time. Although it does have a tendency to take up probably at least an hour a day of my time as I'm watching it play itself. Because it's not 100% automatic. There's still some small things you have to do in between fights to set up and prepare and build your teams. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Super Cane Magic Zero launches May 30th. I have no idea what this game is, but it's coming for the PS4, PlayStation 4, a Switch, and PC in the Americas and in Europe. I think that's probably as much information as we need to say. Let's see, it seems like it's a co-op twin stick shooter battler game. Yeah, definitely it's a player versus player style game. I'm never interested in those.
Got something to hide?
For justice, incoming.
Let's see. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article. Nintendo announces its E3 plans for 2019. It includes 2 competitions featuring top players of Smash Bros. Ultimate and Splatoon, and a Nintendo Direct on the morning of June 11th, and a Nintendo Dreamhouse Live. All of this is around the time of E3, but I don't think actually at E3, because Nintendo hasn't been at E3 at all. So they're I don't know how they don't get sued for using E3's name, quite frankly. Maybe Nintendo directly doesn't use it, but the news Gamatsu added that part. Let's see. Okay, more secrets, more spells. That's all we gotta do, and keep on winning so we get up in ranked play. It's been over a week now, and we really haven't made it up in rank play for any of the accounts. I don't think I've even done much rank play, or any rank play possibly, for the main account. Moving on, Tech Raptor has an article, New Persona 5, the royal details, more confidence, more hours, more music. It seems like the royal is just kind of like a DLC expansion for Persona 5, where I thought it was going to be a standalone, slightly different game. There is another Persona 5 spin-off game, that other Persona 5 spin-off game definitely is a different style of gameplay, but I was expecting this one to be different too. Unfortunately, it's hard for anybody to get hyped about well, it's hard to get hyped about Persona 5 in general when Atlas of Japan is not letting anybody stream it even now. So it came, people were hyped the few weeks it came out, after the few weeks that it came out, but then it was quickly forgotten because there's no streamers out there promoting it or reminding people that it existed. And I would argue that I would suspect that Persona 5 came out at probably the wrong time of the year, when there was a lot more competition. If it was coming out 2 weeks ago, then there would have been no competition at all, just Days Gone, and people playing Persona 5 would have had no interest in Days Gone probably. So they could have owned weeks upon weeks of news cycle just by having a different time in which they came out.
Got something to hide?
GameIndustry.biz has an article, Konami enjoys its 5th consecutive year of profit growth, mobile Yu-Gi-Oh games, and PES Online. What is that? Online mode helps drive Japanese publisher to $2.37 billion. What is PES? Oh, it's Pro Evolution Soccer. That's what it is. I knew I'd heard of that, but so yeah, it kind of sucks though that Konami is succeeding when Konami is like the worst example of a game publisher, game developer ever. Konami is the one that is really just has no interest to make any kind of quality product or quality art, and they're just trying to screw people out, and yet they're somehow succeeding. And in fact, they are saving up to move their offices, which they've already done relatively recently, as far as I understood that story. So maybe moving their offices means that they are in the process of shuttering some of their divisions, but it would have felt more just if Konami had gone bankrupt after the failure of like that Metal Gear Survive game. And Konami, I guess, is also a great example of how capitalism doesn't work the way it is preached to work. Like, you would assume irritating your entire fan base, which Konami did, and selling terrible quality products, which Konami has done, and would end up in fewer people buying their products and then making less money, but it's just not the case. You can be a scummy company and still be profitable. Konami proves it. So yeah, capitalism doesn't work. Not always, not even a lot of times. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Meta Revelations Ring Spirit, which looks like an RPG Maker game. and the graphics don't look that good, and it's free to play. So I guess if you're interested, you can play it. But yeah, it just looks like an old school JRPG, but it's English only. If that's a problem, I don't have anything else that I really need to say about that. Okay.
Reporting for duty. Last warning.
There we go. Next, we have a game on Steam called Grind Zones, which looks like an asset flip game, mobile port style game. Half of these screenshots don't even render. That might be Steam's fault though, so I'll hold that against them. But yeah, this game looks stupid. $3.99, English only. Yeah. This looks like you're just gonna be walking down some very narrow paths in some different areas, and I assume there will be cold grind zones, and you're just gonna be hacking and slashing and grinding.
The light protects me.
Reporting for duty.
Another turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Piece of Evil. This one's tagged nudity. Let me look at these screenshots before I show them off. Nah, it doesn't look anything too unfamily friendly. Piece of Evil. It's a visual novel. It's got some, I would say, slightly different, lengthy, taller anime characters. It's a slightly different art style. Definitely going in the opposite direction of the moe art style.
Is someone injured?
Some of these creatures, some of the characters seem to be cat girls or fox girls or something. I don't know, but it seems like it's not any. That might be a rabbit girl here. It's tagged with nudity. It's $6.49. Do I know the publisher is Manga Gamer? That doesn't really mean much. It's English only. I think at this point we would want to say a game that does not have the full Japanese voice in it, or a Japanese subtitle, that then also has an anime appearance, seems to be contradictory to what I expect for quality. So I think I can skip Piece of Evil pretty fairly and not put it on the power list, because if this was good, it would be in Japanese. It just would. It would be in Japanese. That would be the original language. So yeah, you take it from that perspective. Also, I would say that I need to be more careful on what visual novels make it to the wish list and what don't, because I really don't want to invest a huge amount of time here. Yep. So it's there if you're interested in it. I guess Piece of Evil is, but I'm gonna try to curate my collection a little bit more than that, than just every slightly good or mediocre visual novel out there. Let's see. Next we have a low effort asset flip game called Fluid Lander. I don't know if this is really asset flips as much as this is just a combination of somebody found a weird looking fluid effect in Unreal or Unity and decided to try to make a spaceship lander game based on that. Every single screenshot we're going through here shows me nothing that I can take as information. It's just crazy. But this thumbnail tells me that they've probably just stolen or licensed an anime girl for no reason in this game. It's free to play, and it's English and Japanese.
Let me think.
But even in the video, this is ridiculous. It's not something that you would want to actually play. This is just garbage on the screen at all times. Yeah. Yeah, it really doesn't deserve any more comment than that.
Reporting for duty.
I'm trying to get through all these games, and I'm spending too much time. Next we have a game called Puss in Boots: Fear No Human. Now, I think Disney doesn't own the rights to the phrase Puss in Boots. Like most Disney games, like most Disney movies, they are based on public domain stories. So somebody's made a platform, and maybe they're trying to confuse the market a little bit by making this game, or maybe they just wanted to make a platformer and they're using an open public domain story game. This is $8.99.
Let me think.
Let's see if this developer's made anything else. No. This doesn't look terrible though. It doesn't look great either. I'm gonna give this one a chance and put it on the fall list and see if people actually review it.
Justice. Reporting for duty.
Let's see. What do I want to kill? Something like that. Right. Next, we have a game on Steam called Summer Rush, which I assume is like a cook serve delicious style game where you're acting as some kind of waiter or something and delivering food on a beachside. Yeah, $2.99 discounted. It looks like the frame rate is terrible on this game. It's not widescreen. English only is the language. Yeah. Nothing here looks interesting, so I don't think there's anything more that needs to be said there. Let's see, I'm just gonna take an opportunity to close articles we've already talked about. Alright, we need to switch over to Mage to play more spells. GameIndustry.biz, Unity is seeking another $125 million in funding. A Series E round is the third in 3 years, and it would value the company at almost $6 billion. So, why is Unity seeking more funding? That seems weird. I don't know what they're trying to do. They're trying to go to an initial public offering in 2020. But this also would be in part what a pump and dump scheme is. I don't think Unity is doing that. I would hate to think Unity is doing that. But getting a bunch of people to invest early in your company and then releasing shares on the stock market, which is the initial public offering in 2020, and then potentially seeing those shares manage to be way less than what you expected them to be. But I don't know why that would be the case. The only thing I could say is that maybe they're trying to make money off of Unreal Engine and Epic and Fortnite. Something to consider here is Rocket League was made in Unity, I think. So if Rocket League is ported over to Unreal Engine, then Rocket League maybe is paying less money to Unity, or no money to Unity. there's still plenty of mobile developers out there. It would certainly kill.
Runs out on me.
It would really, really hurt Unity if it would really hurt Unity if there was a if Unreal Engine started to be able to be used to make mobile games. This is one of those articles that's a little too inside baseball for me, frankly. Like, they may just be trying to get funding for no reason, or there might be some underlying problem with Unity that's not obvious. A lot of games get made in Unity though, so I don't know what that underlying problem could be. Let's see, freeze a minion and then deal damage to it. How about we just do this? And let's see. This. And hit that. And then return. Moving on to more exciting news, Gamatsu DNA is going to release a new and exciting Pokemon game for smartphones by March 2020. I don't know if this is going to be a Pokemon game like a Pokemon game where it's an RPG, or if it's going to be maybe a card-based game, something that I wouldn't be really surprised if it was very similar, in fact, to Pokemon Go, except for the fact that it is going to possibly eliminate the need to walk around and go to different places. Quite frankly, if you gave me Pokemon Go without the walking, without the having to walk to hatch eggs and such, I probably would consider playing Pokemon Go. If it's more of a card-based battle game, that would make sense too. Particularly if it's in connection with the Pokemon trading card game, that would be cool, certainly. But I don't know what else you do. But yeah, there's no details right now, so this is a hype article for sure. Let's hit that. And just kill that while we're here. Gamatsu has an article, Dusk Diver coming to the PS4 and Switch worldwide this fall. Dusk Diver being what? A combat system. What kind of game is this? Let's see. You travel. I think it's a beat 'em up game, but I'm having a hard time figuring it out. It's currently on early access, so let's see what that does.
You require my assistance. Aha! Aha! Job done.
There we go. Alright, so here's Dusk Diver on Steam. It seems like it's very polished. I was not expecting this at all. I was expecting a 2.5D style game. Yeah, it looks like it's a beat 'em up game. Where you walk around, kind of like a Persona game. Wow, it's rated very positively. Early access for $24.99, and there's like one free DLC. Full Japanese and Chinese voice acting, just not English. Wow, this is a game I have totally overlooked. I definitely need to put this on the wish list. Like all that problem I have with Persona, not being able to show Persona footage, I could alleviate by playing Dusk Diver. Here's some more screenshots of how the fighting goes.
Jaina versus Maiev.
Okay, well, yeah.
None can escape my
Every now and then there is something that I miss. Quality, well, I just miss for one reason or another. And that's a great example of something that I'm sure somebody has talked about or I've seen come out and I've ignored. Or maybe it is on the fall list and I just haven't been up to date at all on curating the fall list, so there could easily be 100 games on the fall list right now that are actually worth putting on the wish list and maybe purchasing for the winter sale when that happens. Moving on though, we have a game here called Chess Arena, which seems to be some weird style game where it's kind of chess, but maybe not even. This is like Chinese chess, though, not the Western chess, and so then you wouldn't really understand the rules, and the English is not supported. It's $2.39. So it's like a battle chess Chinese game, although I would say the graphics look a little bad. So there's something also probably to be said about that. Let's see. We don't need to talk about that. We already talked about that game. Next, we have a game on Steam called RoboSoul from the Depths of Pax Anima. Let's see. This looks like this is probably a hack and slash game. There's way too much on the screen, quite frankly. And way too much in the title. It's just going too far in all of its design. It's early access for $4.79 discounted, English only. There's guns, there's swords, there's tons of things on the screen. It's just too much. And then if I click on this developer, surprise, surprise, it's the first game ever made by this developer. Yeah, that's a skip. Let's see. If I did this and didn't do nothing else, I guess. Let's see, where's the mouse? Next, Gamatsu has an article, Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle version 1.5 update, DLC characters, Nato, Kuragani, Teddy, Seth, and Heart Ano launch May 21st. These are some characters, I think, from the Persona series or other series. Let's see, is there anything else really worth mentioning? No, not unless you're into Blaze Blue in the first place. But yeah, more characters. Blaze Blue is still a second tier style of game. So I can get a 4 or less. That will, well, what? That should have been 3 less. I played wrong. I've played wrong. Check this next game since it's tagged with nudity. Yeah, this is still fun. Next we have a game called Meryl, the Labyrinth of the Black Sea, which is just an RPG Maker game. It's already rated mixed. There's nothing here that should encourage you to buy this game, including this one screenshot. This is $9.74. It's apparently a part of a huge bundle, and it's English and Chinese. So yeah, probably a cheap Chinese style RPG clone. Let's see, Komatsu Under Night in Birth EX CLR has been rated for the PS4 and Switch in Taiwan. This is the next version of the fighting game series. I believe it's a fighting game. Yeah, it's tagged a fighting game. Yeah. No PC or no PC or Xbox support though, and that's a little bit weird. The Under Night series being horribly named, as they add just more subtitles to it, I think, in what could only be described as a troll by the developers. Let's see. What do I want to do? Gamatsu has an article here. To Be a Dummy Head VR titles now available for PS4 and PSVR in Japan. These seem to be more guy-on-guy style games from their art style. That would be my guess. Maybe I'm putting something in there that's not true. These seem to be really short experiences also. Let's see. Never even heard of this. To Be a Dummy Head. One is called Hotel Elevator Story. One is called The Ferris Wheel Story. Let's see. There's this trailer. It almost feels like it's an ASMR style experience. Yep. Let's see. We've got two of these. We can do that. We can do that. We can end the turn. I doubt those games are going to come to the West. Next we have a game on Steam called Greenfield Silver Tree, which looks like it's a player versus player battle game. That looks like it's a cheap Chinese or just a low effort asset flip game. It's tagged as an RPG. It's $4.24 discounted, and it does say it supports English and Japanese, but clearly it is full audio in Chinese. Yeah, it looks cheap. It looks like it's bad quality. We ran into quite a lot of that today. Let's see. Next we have a game called Zombiotic, which looks like it's an isometric. I don't know what kind of game this really is. It feels like might be some kind of a tower defense game with small square pixel graphics, and then zombies come in and you try to defend it, so it's kind of like a tower defense game. It's $13.99 though, and from the visual graphics you can definitely tell it's not worth that. English and French as language, interesting. One damage to the minion and to the one next to it.
Target stealth minions.
Alright, well. then I'm gonna play this, and I'm gonna play this. Then in the turn, just so I play spells. Gematsu has an article, first look at Blue-Winged Chevalier, the Students of Round remake for PS Vita. It's odd that they're still making PS Vita games. This looks like this is a JRPG, maybe dungeon crawler. Let's see if there's any more screenshots worth mentioning. Not really. This game, Blue-Winged Chevalier, must have been slightly popular though if it's getting a remake, but I'd imagine if it was really popular, they would be remaking it to the Switch and not remaking it to the Vita. At this point, we are 2 hours and 30 minutes in. I'm gonna just cover the news real quickly and let's wrap up here because we've done everything, and sure, I could go to the main account and try to play some ranked Paladin, but I don't think that's really gonna be worth the time. So GameIndustry.biz has an article here. Capcom creates a feeder leagues to grow the Street Fighter esports. 3 new competitions kick off this summer to prepare players for professional tournaments. I'm not sure people want to play Street Fighter as an esport. Gematsu had a ton of articles today. Mary Skelter 2 is coming to the West for Switch. It's a digital only release. Mary Skelter, I think, is a dungeon crawler RPG, yeah. I don't even think it's probably that good, but I'd have to double check on that. But yeah, it's coming to the West on the Switch, not the PlayStation, not the PS, the Vita. We already talked about that story. And there's a lot of games I'm just gonna have to look at probably over the weekend. And if there's anything that really is worth mentioning or showing off, I'll hold it for Monday. TechRaptor has this article, Dark Negative, Alien Among Monsters. I don't know what this is about though. Oh, this is about that Game Thief, where they're talking about the Game Thief because they're obsessed with the Game Thief that came out years ago. So forget that. That's not a valid piece of news. It's more of a weird editorial historical thing. Just a bunch of Steam games. Bunch of games that came out. TechRaptor has this article. We spoke to Stone Mayor Games about their new retailer policy. I don't know who Stone Mayor Games is. They're a maker of tabletop board games. Okay, well then that doesn't have anything to do with video games, so that's not news either. Gematsu has the Digital Devolver E3 press conference being set for June 9th. Of course, the Digital Devolver press conference is a joke, and it will probably only talk about 2 games and then show a bunch of joke comedy skits that will be a waste of your time. And quite frankly, if Digital Devolver did their press conference a week after E3 or a week before E3, I would way enjoy it more, because then I would have time for it. Like, if they were doing it today, I probably would be watching it right now. But because they do it during E3, right when you're trying to deal with actual news, you're just too busy. GameIndustry.biz has this odd title, odd article that's kind of SJW, challenging players' entitlement by making them homeless. Homelessness is intimidating for any artist who really wants to take it seriously, says Delve Interactive founder Deanie Hayes. Yeah, there isn't a lot of games where you play as a homeless person because that would be a character who is unempowered, and you want powerful characters. And yeah, there aren't a lot of games where you play as homeless people because that would be very depressing. Now, arguably, there are quite a few games where you play as homeless people. They're just in different environments. When you've left home, like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, they were effectively homeless. When you go on large journeys, the new God of War game, I'm sure you're homeless for a while there. So it does happen. It's just not, you don't play as somebody who is a long-term homeless person, and a lot of the people who are long-term homeless people are either physically or mentally disabled, which in general you don't want to play as somebody who is physically or mentally disabled if that disability really is going to be a burden. So yeah, you don't play as people that are missing legs very often, that don't immediately get those missing legs replaced with robot legs in video games either, for the same reason. Tech Raptor has another article here, unraveled the mind's mystery in the psychological thriller The Shattering. This game I don't think is too close to coming out, and this might be a walking simulator with some pretty graphics, but it does look more polished than most, and I'm not fully opposed to something like this. So let's see, let's get an idea when The Shattering is out. It's on Steam right now. It's planned for Q4 2019, and the company is called Super Sexy Software. Frankly, I like the name a lot for their company, but they probably should change it. Just switch it over to Super Sweet Software, and then in your mind always know that you meant sexy. Yeah, I'm probably would wishlist this. I don't know if I need to wishlist or follow list it when it's not even got a release date, though. That's an announcement of an announcement style of information that I don't want to have to deal with games until they actually have committed to release. TechCraft has another article, cause mayhem and destruction in VR nautical combat game Battle Wake. This looks interesting with the tattoos. And that would, I suppose, be slightly more interesting of a pirate ship fighting each other game if you could magically cause krakens to summon and attack other creatures. This actually looks really cool by adding that magical element to it, but it's VR only. It's only because they're being limited by VR that they thought of this idea of magic rings where you point to target. Cool idea. I just wish it wasn't VR only. Alright, and I only have a couple more articles, so don't worry, we're not going to sit here for a long time. TechRaptor has a Dark Devotion review devoted to darkness. Dark Devotion seems like it is a Diablo clone of some sort, although it's more 2.5D. Maybe I was thinking of a different game. Well, they give it a 7.0, very good. While Dark Devotion suffers from several easy-to-fix flaws that stop it from being perfect, it remains a deep, dark, and engaging action RPG. Pros: deep exploration gameplay, intense combat, and non-direct storytelling. Cons: no way to backtrack, no tracking certain collectibles. That is something that Axiom Verge also has a problem with too, is that it just doesn't really tell you how many health upgrades there are in the entire game, or so for no reason it could have easily told you you've collected 1 of 20 or 5 of 20. So, but without going back to the main menu and seeing if you've hit 100% collections and probably using a walkthrough, you're never going to know if you've gotten all the collectibles in the game. Yeah, we weren't covering games on Steam. I guess I'll cover this one real quick though. Here we have New Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which is just a simplistic kind of resource management game with a mini game with you. It's $5.59 and not worth getting. And that puts me at the Humble Bundle store. Let's see if we've got any new bundles to talk about. Nope, no new bundles. The Lego bundle has 3 days left, and that is that. So I could then put... I feel like I probably did skip some of the announcements at the Sony State of Play, but not really. You can get a free copy of Ages of Wonders 3 at the Humble Bundle store right now. They occasionally give out free games. And I'm just going to kind of quickly scroll down my Twitter feed just to make sure there isn't any more news. But yeah, it's definitely been a slow week in general for video games. If it weren't for Randy Pitchford, let's see, GameIndustry.biz has an article here. ESA reportedly troubled by eroded trust and harsh management styles. I don't know if that's the ESA has lost trust in its employees and its harsh management styles, or if it's troubled by reports of other companies having eroded trust in the games industry and having harsh management styles. I suspect it's probably the ESA itself having internal eroded trust and harsh management styles. Scrolling down my Twitter feed. Magic player Yuyuna Watanabe removed from the Hall of Fame over cheating scandal. I think we'll probably talk about that on Monday. That seems like it's big news. Honestly, if there was a game I didn't mention from the Sony State of Play, it was probably only one game. Dragon Slayer Trilogy is now available for pre-order for the Xbox One. How's that a trilogy though? I thought there was only 2 Dragon Slayers games. I'm gonna have to search out how that works. Okay, yeah, that's all the Twitter I need to scroll down. Well, we started late for Friday. Did that really change too much? It probably sped me up and made me decide not to break it up into episodes, but otherwise that's that. We got all the daily quests done. We're fine. The only thing we really didn't accomplish is playing ranked play, and frankly, I'm just not willing to spend the extra effort to play ranked play on any of the accounts, even the main account. That's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.